I want you to picture something for me. You're standing in the most beautiful ballroom you've ever seen in your life. Crystal chandeliers above you. White roses everywhere. The smell of expensive food in the air. It's your sister's wedding. And the man standing next to you, the man you've been married to for 6 years, the man who makes your coffee every single morning, who stayed up 3 nights straight when your mom was in the hospital, who has never, not once, made you feel like anything less than his whole entire world, is being laughed at, out loud, by people he has never even met before. And not one person in that room, not one stood up for him. Except me. And what happened next? Changed. Everything. Stay with me. Because this story, you need to hear every single word of it. But real quick, before I get into it, drop in the comments right now, what city are you watching from? I got people tuning in from Atlanta, from Houston, from Chicago, from LA. I want to know where and why people are at. Go ahead. Drop your city. I'll wait. And if you are new here, if this is literally the first video you've ever clicked on my channel, first of all, welcome. You picked a good one to start with. Second, hit that subscribe button right now. Don't scroll past it. Don't say, I'll do it later. Do it now. Because the stories I tell on this channel, they are not the kind you want to miss. Okay. Now let me tell you about the worst and the best night of my entire life. My name is Sarah, and 6 years ago, I married a man named Daniel Cole. Now, let me tell you who Daniel is before I tell you what happened. Because if you're gonna understand this story, if you're really gonna feel it the way I need you to feel it, you have to know him first. Daniel is not loud. He doesn't walk into rooms and demand attention. He doesn't post on social media. He doesn't talk about himself. He is the kind of man who notices when you're tired before you even say a word. He is the kind of man who fixed my car at 11 p.m. in the rain because I had an early shift and he didn't want me to worry. He is the kind of man who learned how to braid hair, YouTube tutorials, 3 weeks straight, because my little niece was visiting and her mom wasn't around, and he didn't want her to feel like something was missing. That is Daniel. And when I met him, he was working as a janitor. At a hospital. Night shift. 5 days a week. Never complained. Not once. Did I care? No. Absolutely not. I grew up watching my dad work 2 jobs his entire life and still come home and make us feel like the richest kids in the world. I know what a real man looks like. And baby, it ain't about the job title. We got married in a small ceremony. Just us, a few close friends, my mom. It was perfect. But my sister Claire's wedding? That was a whole different world. Claire is 4 years younger than me. And Claire, God bless her, married up. Her husband, Tyler Hargrove, comes from old money. Like, generational wealth. Like, we have a summer home and also a winter home kind of money. And his family? His family is the kind of people who look at you and in the first 30 seconds are already calculating your net worth, your zip code, and your career trajectory. I knew this going in. Daniel knew this going in. We talked about it in the car on the way to the venue. You sure you want to do this? I asked him. Half joking. Half not. He looked at me and laughed. That easy laugh of his. Sarah, it's a wedding. How bad can it be? Oh, Daniel. Baby. You had no idea. The venue was the Grand Hargrove Hotel. Biggest, most beautiful hotel in the city. Marble floors. Gold fixtures. A ballroom that looked like something out of a movie. Staff everywhere in matching uniforms. The whole thing was absurd. We walked in, and I immediately felt it, that energy. That specific energy that rich people give off when they see someone they've already decided doesn't belong. Daniel was wearing his best suit. Navy blue. I had helped him pick it out the week before. He looked handsome. He looked put together. He looked like my husband. But to them, he was already nobody. And the night hadn't even started yet. The first time it happened, we were at the cocktail hour. Tyler's mother, Margaret Hargrove, came over to greet us. She air-kissed my cheek, smiled at me, and then she looked at Daniel and said, and I'm quoting this directly because I will never forget it as long as I live. She said, "Oh, and you must be the husband. Claire mentioned you work at the hospital." Daniel smiled. Politely. "Yes, ma'am. Going on 5 years now." And she said, while literally looking past him at the room, "Maintenance, right? That's sweet." And she walked away. Just like that. Like he wasn't even worth a full conversation. I felt Daniel's hand tighten slightly around mine. Just slightly. That was the only sign. I leaned up and whispered, "We don't have to stay." He shook his head. "It's your sister's wedding. We're staying." That was Daniel. But it didn't stop there. It got worse. Tyler's uncle, a big loud guy named Frank, 3 scotches deep, came over during dinner and actually asked Daniel, point blank, in front of a whole table of people, "So what do you actually do, man?" "Like, for work." Daniel said, "I'm in facility management." Frank laughed. Like it was funny. Like it was a joke. He goes, "Facility management, that's what we're calling it now?" Back in my day, we just said janitor. And the whole table laughed. I felt something crack inside of me. Daniel just smiled. Picked up his fork. Kept eating. I could not do the same. I said, "He keeps an entire hospital clean and running so that sick people can heal safely." "What do you do, Frank?" Dead silence. Frank's face went red. He mumbled something and looked away. And my sister Claire, sitting 3 seats down, caught my eye and shook her head at me. Like I was the one who did something wrong. That hurt more than anything Frank said. I went to the restroom about an hour later. I needed a minute. I needed to breathe. And when I pushed open the door, I heard voices. I recognized one of them immediately. It was Margaret, Tyler's mother. She was talking to 2 of her friends, women I didn't know, and I froze just inside the doorway because I heard her say my name. She said, "Sarah seems lovely." She really does. It's just such a shame about her choices. One of the women goes, "What do you mean?" And Margaret said, "I'm standing right there. She doesn't know I'm right there," she said. She's a smart girl. Pretty girl. Could have done something with herself. But she went and married the help. Spent 6 years playing house with a janitor. Claire always said she had a thing for projects. They laughed. They all 3 laughed. I stood there. I could not move. I have replayed that moment so many times. I've thought about all the things I could have said. All the ways I could have burned that woman to the ground with my words. But in that moment, I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just turned around and walked back out. And I went to find my husband. He was sitting at our table, by himself, jacket still on, looking completely calm. He was watching the dance floor. There was a small smile on his face. I sat down next to him, and I grabbed his hand and I said, "Daniel, I want to leave." He looked at me. Really looked at me. He knew something had happened. He said, "Tell me." I shook my head. "Later. I just want to leave." He stood up. No argument. No questions. Just stood up, buttoned his jacket, and said, "Okay. Let's go say goodbye to Claire." And as we walked across that ballroom, heads turning, people whispering, I felt something. I felt ashamed. Not of him. Never of him. Of myself. For not saying something. for walking out of that bathroom without a word. And I made a promise to myself in that moment that the next time someone disrespected my husband, I would not stay quiet. I had no idea the universe was about to give me that chance. Right then, that same night, we found Claire near the entrance of the ballroom. I hugged her, told her the wedding was beautiful. Meant it. The wedding itself was stunning. But as I pulled back, I saw something in Claire's eyes. Something uncomfortable. Like guilt. She said, "You're leaving already?" I said, "Yeah. It's been a long night." She grabbed my arm and said, "Sarah, I'm sorry. About Tyler's family. They're old-fashioned. They didn't mean anything by it." I looked at my little sister and I said, "They called your brother-in-law the help, Claire. At your wedding." She looked down. And that's when Tyler appeared. Tyler is generally a decent guy, I'll be honest with you. A little soft, a little too close to his mother's opinions, but decent. He shook Daniel's hand. Genuinely. Said, "Hey man, glad you could make it." And then he said something strange. He said, "Hey, is Richard coming tonight? Did he make it back from the coast?" Daniel's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. He said, "He should be here soon." Tyler nodded, seemed satisfied, and walked back to his guests. I looked at Daniel. "Who's Richard?" I asked. Daniel smiled at me. That quiet smile. The one that always meant he knew something I didn't. He said, "Old friend." Old friend who Tyler Hargrove is personally asking about at his own wedding reception? Daniel just squeezed my hand. "Why don't we stay a little longer?" I didn't understand, but I stayed. And about 20 minutes later, the whole room changed. I heard the murmur before I saw anything. That ripple that goes through a room when someone important walks in. I turned toward the entrance, and there was a man. Tall, well-dressed, not flashy, just that specific kind of quietly expensive that you can't fake. Salt and pepper hair, easy confidence, the kind of guy who walks into a room like he owns it. Because, as it turned out, he did. Margaret Hargrove, the same woman who had laughed about my husband in the bathroom not 2 hours ago, crossed the entire ballroom in her heels to greet this man. She was glowing, flushed, suddenly the most charming version of herself. "Richard, you made it. We were so hoping you'd be here tonight." The man, Richard, smiled politely, shook her hand, and then looked past her. His eyes found Daniel, and his whole face changed. He walked past Margaret mid-sentence like she wasn't there, crossed the ballroom, and wrapped my husband in a hug. Not a handshake. A hug. A real one. The kind you give someone you actually love. He said, loud enough for the people around us to hear, "Danny, man, I've been trying to get you on the phone all week." Daniel laughed. "I know. I've been dealing with the Montgomery renovation. It's a whole thing." Richard shook his head, grinning. "We'll talk about it. I need your sign-off on the Chicago proposal before Friday." I watched Margaret's face. I watched it go from confusion to curiosity to something dawning, something cold. And I still didn't fully understand what was happening until Richard turned to me. He said, "You must be Sarah. Daniel talks about you constantly." He smiled. "I'm Richard Connolly." Richard Connolly. Even I knew that name. Richard Connolly was the founder, the CEO, and the sole owner of the Connolly Hotel Group, which owned 47 luxury hotels across the United States, including the Grand Hargrove Hotel, the one we were standing in, the one Tyler's family had rented out for this wedding. My husband's best friend, the man Daniel had never once mentioned by full name, owned the building we were standing in. And every single person in that ballroom seemed to realize it at the exact same moment I did. The rest of the evening is something I still struggle to describe. Because once the room understood who Richard was and who Daniel was to Richard, everything shifted. People who had ignored my husband all night were suddenly very interested in him. Frank Loud, Scotch-drunk Frank who had called Daniel a janitor to his face, materialized out of nowhere with a drink outstretched and a big smile like they were old buddies. Daniel declined the drink politely. Didn't say a word about earlier. Just smiled and turned back to his conversation. And that's when Richard, who missed nothing, leaned over to me and said quietly, "Did someone give him a hard time tonight?" I laughed. One short, humorless laugh. Richard nodded slowly, like that was the answer he expected. He said, "You know what Daniel's actual job is, right?" I said, "He runs facility management for." Richard shook his head. "Daniel is my director of operations for the entire East Coast division of Connolly Hotels. Has been for 3 years. He oversees maintenance, renovation, staffing, and operational logistics for 23 properties." He paused. "The janitor thing, that's real, by the way. He started as a janitor. He's never once been ashamed of that. He just doesn't feel the need to announce the rest." I stared at him. He never told me. I said it before I could stop myself. Richard looked at me. He didn't want you to love him differently. And I had to look away, because I was going to cry in the middle of this ballroom, and I refused to give these people that. I found Daniel a few minutes later, standing near the window, away from the crowd that had formed around Richard. I walked up to him, stood next to him. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Then I said, "Director of Operations, East Coast Division, 23 properties." He looked at me sideways. Small smile. I said, "Daniel." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And he said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. He said, "Because you never needed to know. You already thought I was worth something." Margaret found us about 20 minutes later. She had clearly been building up to this. She was smiling, but her eyes were doing something different. Calculating. Reassessing. She said, "Daniel, I have to say, I had no idea you were connected to Richard Connolly. You should have mentioned it." Daniel looked at her, and in the most calm, unbothered voice he said, "I didn't realize it was relevant." The smile flickered on her face. Of course, of course. Well, we'd love to have you both over for dinner sometime. Tyler speaks so highly of Sarah, and now knowing your background." Daniel said, "My background hasn't changed, Margaret. I started as a janitor. I'm proud of that. I worked hard every day for 20 years. He paused. It just turned out I was working hard in the right direction. She didn't know where to look. Of course, she said again, quieter this time. And then Daniel did something I did not expect. He said, "I'm sorry, will you excuse us? I promised my wife a dance." He took my hand, walked me out to the middle of the floor, and we danced, surrounded by every single person who had written him off that night. I put my head against his chest. I could hear his heartbeat. Steady. Calm. I said, "You planned this, didn't you? You knew Richard was coming." He said, "I knew he might. You wanted me to see. Quiet. Then, I wanted you to see. Not them. I don't care about them." His hand tightened at my back. "I wanted you to see that I was always going somewhere. That I wasn't just what people decided I was." I pulled back and looked at him. "Daniel," I said, "I knew that on day one." And that easy laugh. That laugh I fell in love with. "I know you did," he said. "But tonight felt like a good night to make it official. It has been almost a year since Claire's wedding. Tyler's family has reached out to Daniel 3 times for consulting connections within the Connolly network. He's been politely busy. Claire and I are okay. We're better than okay, actually. She called me the week after the wedding and she said I should have said something. To my mother-in-law. To Frank. I should have said something. She cried. I cried. We're working through it. Margaret Hargrove has never acknowledged what she said in that bathroom. I don't think she ever will. And you know what? I've made my peace with that. Because here's what I took away from that night, the real thing under all of it. The people who treat others like they don't matter based on job titles and paychecks, those people are not revealing something about your worth. They're revealing something about theirs. Daniel knew who he was the whole time. He never needed their validation. He never needed their apology. He never needed Richard to walk into that room to make him feel like he was enough. He was always enough. He just let the rest of it catch up eventually. And I fell in love with him all over again that night. Not because of what he turned out to be. Because of how he handled who he was the whole time no one was watching. If you have someone in your life like that, someone who moves quietly, works hard, and lets their life speak for itself, hold on to them. Because that kind of person is rare. And that kind of love is rarer. That's the story. And if it hit you the way I think it did, drop a comment. Tell me what got you. Tell me what city you're in. Tell me if you've ever had someone underestimate you, or someone you love. I read every single one. If you're new here, and you somehow made it to the end of this video, you're officially one of us. Subscribe. Stick around. The stories only get better from here. I'll see you in the next one.